Yeah, I was just going to ask you a couple of quick questions. I understand that you could be quite new to your faith. Is that what's going on?
Sorry, what did you say?
Are you new to your faith?
I wouldn't say
It's Emma. It's Emma, right?
Irene.
Is that your name? What's that?
Irene.
Irene. Okay, sorry. You're new to your faith, Irene?
I'm rediscovering it.
Okay, gotcha. Just so you know, in tarot, I just want to ask you just a quick question. Do you use tarot to figure out kind of future events or current events?
No, I do not. Or current events, in a sense, yes, but I never use it to predict the future. I don't do any predictive readings. It's much more of a tool to kind of get the general idea of what's going on.
And do you have a spirit guide?
Well, I wouldn't say a specific spirit guide. I do pray to God before I start my tarot readings.
Yeah, and when you're looking at tarot cards for current events, do the tarot cards ever lead you in such a way where you know what current events are, or give you some type of insight into them?
Yes.
Okay. Leviticus 19:26, do not practice divination or seek omens. You're doing both. Hang on, you're doing both things. You're seeking omens and practicing divination. Divination would just be trying to figure out currently what is going on through some type of externality, which is other than God. That would be divination, and then omens would be the exact same thing, right? You're looking at the cards for omens of what will happen or has happened or is happening.
So I have done a lot of research on this because of a lot of people who have a lot of controversial opinions when it comes to tarot, and my argument is that when people have maybe like Christian people wouldn't call it mediumship abilities, but gift from God and ability to see more than, I guess, like other people who may not be considered, I wouldn't say like I'm chosen or anything, but there are those kinds of people within the Bible. So would that be considered the same thing or not? Like to be able to use your gift that was given to you by
There's
God.
a distinct difference between revelation and utilizing tarot cards, which would be external to God's revelation, right?
Is because it's a tool?
Yeah, well, what tools are... Let me ask you something. Where do you get the idea for what divine authority is? What is that to you? Is that just God?
To me, divine authority is belief in a higher power and having faith in a higher source.
Okay, for you, is that Jesus Christ?
Yes.
Okay, and so you are beholden to Christ's word, and you believe that Christ is God, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if Christ is God, you have to admit that this is the God of the Old Testament as well as the New Testament, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if that is the case, Leviticus 20:27, a man or a woman who is a medium or a necromancer shall surely be put to death. They shall be stoned with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. Does it sound like they want to see any divination, witchcraft, anything like that?
Okay, so I have read that verse many times, and it's just a bit hypocritical and ironic when a lot of people are able to just pick and choose which verses that they want to use to be able to judge other people, but there are many Bible verses that mention how no one should be able to judge anyone but God. So I just feel it's
Which ones?
Well, I can't, honestly, I don't have it at the top of my head. But
Yeah, do you know what? The Bible actually instructs you the opposite way, that you're supposed to use righteous judgment, especially as a Christian, so that you can judge the fruits of what is a thing, right? Mm-hmm. How else would you know what is evil if you couldn't use judgment? How could you even know? Like, how would you know what to stay away from and what was evil, what was bad, if you couldn't use judgment?
Okay, that's a good point, but I also don't think it's up to people to decide what is righteous. It's almost like having that belief.
No, then who is it up to?
God.
And then what did God instruct you not to do?
I don't really want to argue about this because this is something that I'm still rediscovering within myself, and of course I knew that there are going to be many people who pull Bible verses to come against me and my practice, but I just feel it's I mean, that is what I believe, and I don't think there's much up for argument there.
So even if you were wrong, you believe it anyway?
I can't say that I'm wrong, though.
Okay, well, how do you know you're right?
I'm not saying I'm right either, and that's why I'm telling you that I'm rediscovering this part of me with my, like, connection.
Well, who would you go to determine if you were wrong or right when it came to spiritual matters?
God.
You're going to go to God, and does God talk to you?
I just pray to God I'm able to get more clarification that way, and if I do seek a mentor, then I will, a trusted mentor that I truly believe they have a really good connection to God as well, but I don't.
How do you know that you don't suffer from affirmation bias, where even though tons of people have told you that this is not Christianity, that you just choose not to believe them because you don't want to believe them? How do you know that that's not the case?
I've gone through a lot of spiritual warfare, debating between if this is right or wrong. I've prayed many times about it. I truly believe that God does give gifts to people. I'm not saying like, oh wow, I have like the ultimate gift here, but there are many people who have gifts from God, and my question is, what would make it wrong for them to use that gift?
Nothing? Yeah, nothing would make it wrong for them to use a gift from God. But we are specifically instructed as to what is and is not gifts from God. Tarot cards are not gifts from God, right? We are instructed in this in Leviticus, but also even in the New Testament, we're instructed in this multiple times by Christ's apostles. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any gifts from God. Why would I ever say that? I'm just telling you that we have 2,000 years of Christian history of every single saint who exists explaining that this is not the thing that you should ever gravitate towards, and even Protestants know that this is so. And why is it that you have decided you figured it out and all of them were wrong?
And I've been constantly telling you that I am still rediscovering this, and so
what does that mean, though, rediscovering it? When somebody corrects you, you don't take correction, or how do you rediscover a thing if people who do the thing tell you this is the wrong thing and you go, well, okay, but let me rediscover it? Like, what does that mean, rediscovery? What does that even mean?
Just like you mentioned about like having the righteous judgment, everyone should have their own free thought. So I'm not going to just allow for people to correct me and just go based on that.
Well, then who's allowed to correct you? Whoever you think is correcting you based on your affirmation bias or confirmation bias? Who's allowed to correct you? Like, who's the person who's allowed to tell you, okay, what you're doing here is wrong and here's all the proof? Who's the person who's allowed to do that? Just you? Are you the ultimate arbiter of what is Christian and what is not? Like, who is?
I think the whole journey of spirituality and finding your
journey.
religion.
No, it's a journey. Yeah, everything's a fucking journey.
It's about you finding the impartial, like, opinion yourself, finding these things and allowing yourself to almost formulate your own free thought in relation to your connection to God. But I don't think that
How do you know it's not a demon? How do you know that? How do you know you're not talking to a demon? How do you know it's not a demon who's chatting with you?
I don't think a demon would be the one who leads me back to my faith in Christianity.
Really? Why not? Especially if let's assume for a second that you were utilizing such a bastardized form of Christianity that you could not separate it from modern Satanism, and you just called it Christianity. Wouldn't a great deceiver convince you that a thing which was not Christianity was Christianity? So how do you know that it's not a deceiver?
I'm still figuring that out right now.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right. Two last things on the whole submissive conversation. We have a video to react to, but before we do that, I guess the point I was trying to make by asking you guys about, what would you do for an employer? It's like the same girl who will work a brutal fast food job, dealing with a boss, barking orders, cleaning dirty dishes, the bathroom, shitty customers for like $15 an hour. But like, say a good guy comes into the picture who has the money to support her family and make sure she never has to work a day in her life again. She doesn't want to bow. She doesn't want to cook. She doesn't want to clean, whatever it is. It's just confusing to me because it's like your husband's going to ask way less of you than your employer. You'll do all the cleaning, the cooking. An employer will ask you to do that if you're in like food service or something. A lot of women have experience, in food, waitressing or whatever it is. You'll do it for an employer, but you won't do it for your husband. And that's very confusing to me. Or take it further if it's, if we're not talking about like a job that's a bit more physical, you'll be submissive to your employer that's a cold corporation, your boss, but you won't be submissive to a man who loves you and who you love back. I don't know. It's confusing to me. And the silence would indicate to me that I don't know if you guys agree. Like you've come to this realization that you've all submitted to the faceless corporation. You go work for Facebook or Google or whatever. They compensate you well. But at the end of the day, they tell you, be here at this time, do this, do that, sit in a chair, be good and obedient. If you don't, you lose the job. You get fired. You've traded your submission to men for the cold, heartless corporation. It's an interesting trade.
Yeah, but the comparison is like, your comparison is like, if you're with a man, well, that is your comparison, or you're with a man that makes you not have to work. That wasn't initially what you said. You just said, the question was just, would you bow to your man?
Sure. Well, I added
like,
some extra details here.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Now it's changed. Now you're like, if you don't have to. And by the way, through this conversation, I'm like, I don't know. I kind of changed my mind about the bow. I think.
Oh, you're against the bow now?
No. I was against it, and now I'm like, maybe it's not. Like maybe as a sign of, like maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was initially. Because
I always just think from my perspective, right? It's like, so okay, let's say there's a guy, or I'll even like my own perspective. Like if I'm making $2 million, $3 million a year, and I want to date a submissive girl, and you could be my life partner, and I'll take care of everything. You never have to work a day in your life.
Yeah.
You just got to take care of me. And in fact, by helping me, you'll help me earn more money by taking some of the pressure off my life.
Yeah.
So by freeing up time for me, I'm going to go out there and earn, just because of you, because you're in my life, I'll go earn an extra $500,000 a year because you're making my life easier, and that enables me to work more and earn more.
Yeah, I get that.
But you can do that as a woman, and I can come in your life and totally change it, or you can work for $70K a year.
Yeah, but
9 to 5.
Yeah, it depends.
Be here at this time. Wake up at this time.
But I mean, if that means, if like the money, whatever. First of all, like personally, my value is not necessarily a super rich guy, but yeah, I would be happy to have. But like my criteria is like, if the guy's a dick and then he makes a lot of money, and I wouldn't want to submit. But if like, what I need is a connection, and what I need is like, I also need respect, but I also need to be able to be myself, to be authentic, and to do things that I love. If I'm not able to do the things that I love, like play music or the things that I love, really, that fills my soul, then what's the point of me being in a relationship if I can be myself and do things that I love, and vice versa?
Also,
I think you shouldn't have to choose.
You can play music. What?
That's
You
what I
can
mean.
play
No, because
music.
you said give up tarot, whatever.
Well, she does it for a profession to make money. So
Yeah, but she loves doing it.
So, for example, she could have a day. She could work a full work week where she's got 10 new clients a day,
Yeah.
and she's doing a tarot reading for 10, 20 people a day,
Yeah.
and that's a full-time job.
Yeah, I didn't understand
And
it
a
as
guy-
a job. I understood it just a hobby.
Yeah.
Like
So,
she has to not do things that she loves. That's the only way I understood
I'm just
it.
thinking, like, if you could be involved with a guy that he makes $1 million a year,
Yeah.
and you can be with him, or you can make $100,000 a year and be on your own, I don't know.
Well, there's just so many more elements it's you know,
Sure.
that's why it's like, if you just tell me like a guy that's super rich and I don't have to, sure, I would, I mean, yeah, I would love that. I think who wouldn't want to not have to work?
I would actually always want to work. I
Really?
think life without work, there's no
I-
challenge. It's boring. I personally think
Oh, yeah.
people who are like stay-at-home
Well, we'll
moms,
give you 10 years in the workforce.
they're
and
really
we'll see if you
strong. I
change
could
your
not
mind.
do that. Like,
Wait,
huh?
you go ahead, finish your point. Go ahead.
I was saying that I would always want to work because I feel like I would just feel empty that I'm not pursuing something that I love.
Do you want kids?
I am still kind of debating on that. If I'm
Well,
being
let's
honest.
leave that for a second. How old did you say you were?
22. Just
Yeah,
turned
give it a
22.
decade, and then we'll see if you want to work or not. Give it a decade.
Some people enjoy
Give it a
working.
decade when you're working and you're grinding for 10 hours plus a day at your job, and then we'll see if you want to keep
Do
working.
you think there's guys who genuinely enjoy working? Like men? Do you
Yes.
think men
Yes.
why don't
I
you
think that most men are hardwired for it, and they absolutely enjoy it.
So you
but
think-
they don't have to go into the conflict that women do, the biological conflict of wanting to have a family and childbearing and nesting. Men don't have this same conflict. Women do.
even
And the
if
other
I-
thing is that even though I know men absolutely love to work, right? I think that they absolutely would love to work on their passion projects even more than working at a job for a boss. So if you were to say, okay, man, you're liberated with $5 million to pursue X, I think that they would choose that very quickly.
Okay, but personally, I think like even if I would want to have a child, you can childbear and then you go back to work if you really truly enjoy it. Some women, you think there's not a single woman in this world who really doesn't enjoy working?
No, I would never say that there's not a single. I would never group anything in a monolith. I would say that that most women, the majority, the vast majority of women, if given the choice not to work or to work, would choose not to work.
Perhaps the
And
majority.
I don't think that that's true of men. I think that men would still choose to work, maybe not jobby jobs, but they would still choose to work. But I don't think most women would choose to work. And this bears out when you ask them if they would prefer to work or not work if they did not have to. Most of them say that they would prefer not to.
So do you think, because I always struggle to understand that, because for me, I am, like you say, men are hardwired to want to work. I think that is true for a majority, but for me, as someone who I could not see myself just not doing anything, I constantly have to be on the go and
Well,
constantly-
I think we're speaking past each other, so maybe we can clarify some things. It wouldn't be that you aren't doing anything, but let me ask you a question. Let's take a girl who works at Subway, and she says, I want to work, right?
Okay.
What the hell is the difference between her making a Subway sandwich for a customer and making a sandwich for her husband? I have never really understood that, you know what I mean? They're both work. It's just like, why would you want to go work for strangers instead of working for your family? I've never really understood that.
Well,
it just seems illogical and nonsensical to me.
I do understand that example. I think it just depends on occupation. Like for me, as someone who I wanted to be a lawyer, that's completely different. If you're, you know what I mean? If I would to be a submissive woman, my lawyer skills or my debating skills or problem solving would not be helpful at all when, if I'm trying to be a submissive woman.
Yeah, they would be extremely helpful. So you know why we need really smart women raising children? It's because I don't want really dumb women raising children. So all those women who have the capacity to be really, really good lawyers and doctors and things like this, who have those really high IQs, I'd rather see them at home teaching their children. That's where I'd rather see them for the next generation to turn out all of those great I want those women having babies. And I want them nurturing those babies and making the next high IQ generation, right? I don't want them wasted away in a cubicle. That seems silly to me.
But that's not a wasting away in their cubicle for them, if that's what they truly love to do. I do understand. I mean, if you're someone who wants to have kids, if you're a woman who wants to work a high occupation job and have kids, then for sure you got to make some sacrifices at some point of the child's life when you're working that position. But again, it is possible, and I don't think you should put away your passion to raise a kid because that
Look,
would.
If you want to work, if that's what you feel like you're compelled to do, and you don't actually want to do anything but that, fine. Nobody's saying that you can't do that, right? You can. Yeah, and you have every right to. But for the vast, vast majority of women, the conflict does not come between I want to work or do not want to work. It comes between I have to work, but I'd rather have a family. That's the real conflict which comes up because we value education over family. That's what we do. That's why women get married in their 30s now, because they want to have this social safety net, right? The safety net of something to fall back on. So the big conflict really doesn't come into play between women who just demand to be at work because they want to be there all day, but rather that they have to work because people have to work in modernity in order to make ends meet, right? But let me ask you this, now that I've kind of given you my view on this, do you think that if you went down the street and asked women, would you prefer to spend the rest of your life working, or would you prefer early on to be able to settle down with a man who could provide for you that you loved? Which answer do you think they'd give?
I mean, most likely they would want to have a family and settle down. But
Right.
But all I'm saying is that
That's my whole point, right? And so, like, I would prefer a society where we made that easier for them to do that, rather than a society which valued sending our best and brightest women not to carry the future generation of children, which only they could do, but rather to slave the workforce underneath a boss. That just seems insane to me.
Right, so everything is about the choice. I just think that there shouldn't be that much societal pressure to have kids if you don't want to. You know what I mean?
Why? Why shouldn't there be so much societal pressure instead to value going to college, for instance, where useless degrees are handed out like they're candy? In fact, it's so bad, the standards have gotten so low that anybody can do it. College can't be about rewarding the best and the brightest, or everybody couldn't get through college, but they can. And so the standards have necessarily lowered in order to appeal to the lowest common denominator. A high school diploma is the equivalency of a high school education just 70 years ago. So it's like, why shouldn't there be a national propaganda around a nuclear family and having children, instead of national propaganda at wasting your youth and your childbearing years going and getting a worthless degree that almost nobody ever uses? I'd like to know the answer to that question.
Because if you know that your true passion is being in this whatever occupation job that is, and then you have a society pressuring you to have a kid, and you feel like, oh, I have to do this, I have to sacrifice this, you're always going to regret not pursuing what you want to do, and that kid is going to know that you didn't do what you wanted to do. And that's
So what?
That's
So what? What? I mean, what do you think sacrifice is about and patriotism? Do you think that men who get drafted and have to go to war, right? That they don't look back and go, oh, I could have done X and I could have done Y and I could have done Z? There is such a thing as patriotism. There is such a thing in a nation as sacrifice for the nation. Why is this idea that everybody must endlessly pursue endless hedonism the best way, instead of people pursuing what the greater good for the actual nation is? That seems way wiser to me. If you're gonna propagandize an entire country, why not propagandize them towards procreation and having nuclear families and things which are really good for the health of the nation? Why not do that?
So you're reading that as a grand scheme of things instead of in a particular family, because sometimes there are women and men who have kids and don't pursue something they wanted to do, and that affects the family, and that causes a generational trauma. Because
every human being on planet Earth has some pursuance that they weren't able to do. The whole world is filled with failed rock stars and failed artists and failed, professionals of all kinds who chased a dream that they were not able to achieve. I mean, most people have some regret of something they weren't able to do. And this kind of idea of that, because people have kind of unachievable goals, that we shouldn't kind of move society towards these achievable things, which most people can do, which have proven time and time again to increase the happiness levels of almost everybody around.
Okay, so you think for the greater good, it is important to pursue something that you don't want, even if that's going to make you and your family miserable, possibly.
Well, so this is loaded. Recognize how you said this, right? If it necessarily was going to make people's families miserable, how could it be for the greater good? That makes no sense. So if it was for the greater good, the most amount of people would find it useful, and the most amount of people would find this to be something which they would want to pursue, or it couldn't be for the greater good. right? It couldn't be.
I'm speaking of
Like how could it? You know what I mean?
I mean, you were speaking about greater good, and the way I understood, you were speaking about a nation and perhaps even a world, how it would work better in a world. But then there are going to be those really unhappy families who just did this because that was the societal pressure. I mean, that's always going to be the case. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but we're not going to, you would never in a million years, for instance, you would never say that there are going to be some people on planet Earth who perform better when they're doing drugs. There are. There's going to be some people who do. You would never say everybody should be able to do drugs because some people who do drugs perform better than others and have regrets they never did drugs. Does that even make sense? Would you ever say that in a million years?
Of course not. I don't think.
Of course not.
But I don't think drugs would affect anyone positively, to be honest with you.
No, wait a second. Caffeine
Well,
doesn't affect
unless you're
people.
talking
Hang on,
about-
wait, hang on. Caffeine and sugar doesn't affect people positively?
Oh, that's what I was about to say. Unless you're talking about those things and like.
You mean drugs?
Like, do you mean something that was prescripted, or just you're gonna go?
Even prescriptive as well. There's all sorts of, like, for instance, you think narcotics like painkillers, which are highly addictive, aren't highly useful to society? Of course they are. And so, like, this idea that, wait a second, because some people would have preferred to have been on those drugs, that we can't regulate or propagandize against them, that's insanity. It's the same thing at the national level. This idea of endless hedonism and individualism with absolutely no thought to the greater society at whole is pure female solipsism. Men seem to understand this very well, and the men I talk to go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We probably should move towards those things. But when you look at voting patterns, that's what those things move to. Patriotism, nuclear family, anti-degeneracy, that's what men vote for. Women vote purely around solipsism and let me do what I want, which
So-
is just crazy to me.
If everyone understands that this is the optimal option, why do you think, especially in this day and age, there's so many people who disagree with that?
Okay, I'm going to give you the answer, and you're not going to like it. For one reason only, because of women's suffrage. Women's suffrage absolutely destroyed the United States of America, and women's voting patterns prove it. And the truth of the matter is that women vote mostly against risk-taking. And because they vote mostly against risk-taking, they impede on people's freedoms. And so individual people, men especially, who had the opportunity to vote out illegal immigration, keep the country exactly how they wanted it to be, that was all completely destroyed by female suffrage. Men, if only men had been able to vote in the United States of America, right now, the United States of America would be beyond the glorious shining example on the hill. It would be beyond that. And the voting patterns prove it. Every single time it's a vote for security over the freedom to actually pursue these higher values, women vote against it almost every single time.
Okay.
And that's what I think. I think that that's the primary problem. The primary problem is that the two sexes do not see eye to eye on what is valuable. Mm-hmm. And this is why I think that one's going to have to inevitably choose, and it'll always move back that way. That all of this, what you see before you right now with egalitarianism, this will all reset eventually, and it'll just go back to primitivism. Men will be in charge anyway.
Andrew, you're going to get canceled if you're talking like that, Andrew. You got to be careful. You're going to get canceled, my friend.
I don't think so. I think,
Well-
I've never, actually, you know who knows this better than anybody? Feminist theorists know this better than anybody else. Feminists are the ones who came up with force doctrine. I just borrowed it from them. They were the ones who understood that men at any time collectively could take charge, and there was very little women could do. Feminists theorized all of this. They knew all of this years and years before I was ever born, hundreds of years before I was born, in fact. Almost 200 years before, in fact. It's their own writings that I go off of. They insisted, the feminists insisted that women had the right to vote, but when it came to women voting for the right to vote, they wouldn't let them do it because every time women had the opportunity to vote on their own voting rights, they voted against it. Every single time.
I do have to move things on. We've been on this for a bit, but we do have the video, and then a couple reactions. Austin? Yep. We'll do the video first. The video I sent you private chat.
Oh, okay.
It's just the one we reacted to, I think, last week. Wait, stop. Can you show us, please?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.